we now welcome Arnold August, political analyst and author, who joins us from Canada to discuss the unprecedented scenes at the US Capitol building this Wednesday. Arnold, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure for me to be with you once again.
Joining us and for agreeing to offer your insight into what's happening in the US today. Absolutely unprecedented scenes at the US Capitol building. We've been watching for the past few hours how Trump supporters gathered outside but also managed to breach security and enter the Capitol building. What are your thoughts on what we've seen today?
Well, my first thought is when you say unprecedented scenes, this applies to the United States of America. But unfortunately, these scenes are not unprecedented when it comes to US foreign policy elsewhere in the world. We're talking about a coup, attempted coup in the United States, but I really have a very difficult time to feel any empathy, for example, for the Democrats, the Democratic Party, who are complaining about this fascist coup because the chickens, well, they have come home to roost. It is not unprecedented in US foreign policy to carry out coups far more violent than the ones that is going on in Washington, D.C. at the moment. If we just take recent history in Paraguay, and then the parliamentary coup against Dilma Rousseff in Brazil, and Obama opening the path in March 2015, declaring Venezuela to be a threat to the security of the United States, opening up the path for sanctions and violent coup attempts against the elected government in Venezuela. And then, of course, we have perhaps the most infamous, disgusting fascist coup against Evo Morales that was directly promoted by United States and its allies, such as Canada. We could go all over the globe, if you like, for example, what happened in Yemen, in Libya, but we won't. Let us just deal with Latin America at this time, that this is not unprecedented when it comes to foreign policy. On the contrary, when Biden is inaugurated in a couple of weeks, and then once again, the NATO alliance, the Trudeau and his Lima group, along with Colombia, that they will follow the same policy as the Biden new administration coming into power right now. So we're bound to see these statements, which may seem on the very surface, if you look at it very superficially, oh, it's good. These people are criticizing the coup d'etat that's taking place in the United States, but they don't really oppose what is happening. They just want to make sure. Like, I think the best, who sums it up best, was Biden himself. He says, "What is happening in Washington D.C. This is not what America is all about." Sorry, Mr. Biden. This is what America is all about. What is happening in the Washington D.C. If the same thing happened, for example, over the centuries, when Afro-Americans and Native people have been victim of genocide and slavery, if they would have invaded Washington, D.C., try to take over the Capitol for good reasons because of their historical injustice carried out against them, they would have been mowed down by the armed forces. But look how gently the American democracy is dealing with these right-wing forces. I mean, they're obvious. You have to be colorblind not to see the differences in attitude on the one hand to those people who are demonstrating in Washington, D.C., not demonstrating, I mean, they're actually violent uprising, compared to this happened in that same area, Washington, D.C., peaceful protesters in Washington, D.C., Afro-Americans and their allies protesting peacefully. They have been day in and day out viciously suppressed by the same state apparatus, which is so nice and understanding with the fascist groups that are now running around in Washington, D.C. I mean, it's really a double standard, isn't it?
A very important point there, a point that's been raised by several people who have been analysing today's events, exactly the treatment of these mostly white pro-Trump protesters in Washington, D.C., despite the violence and their clashes with police, completely opposed to other scenes that we've seen, as you say, with peaceful protests by African Americans in the United States. Going forwards, as we expect that despite the scenes of today, Joe Biden will be inaugurated within 2 weeks as the President of the United States. Going forward, what do you think what we've seen today will the repercussions could be for the ongoing tensions within the United States itself at a domestic level?
Well, the ball is now in the camp of the Biden forces because, as you know, they won the elections yesterday and today, and they now have a majority in both houses. So, what is the pretext that the Biden camp will have to put forward, not to put forward policies that are different from the Trump administration? If we just take the example of foreign policy, will the Biden administration take a stand with regards to Venezuela that is more understanding towards Venezuela rather than fostering conflict and coup d'etat? I don't think so. My take on that with regards to Venezuela, Cuba, is that the Biden administration is going to find other means to overthrow the Maduro government. They might even drop Guaido, which I think would be great. As a Canadian, I'd love that to see that because then Justin Trudeau will really look stupid, to put it quite bluntly. That Biden is dropping Guaido, but Trudeau is hanging on to Guaido, irrespective of the fact that he is increasingly isolated in the world. Even the European Union does no longer accept Guaido. So the thing is, there will be a change in tactics, but it will the overall objective will be the same: the overthrow of the Maduro government. The same thing with regards to Cuba. Biden has on several occasions he's criticized Trump from the right, saying, "Look at Trump; he coddles up to dictators such as Castro, such as Maduro, etc." So I am not expecting any major change from the Biden administration with regards to Cuba, with regards to Venezuela. Hopefully, and this is because I have a lot of respect for the American people, the left in the United States, African Americans, and others in the United States. By their actions in the street, they perhaps can force the Biden administration to take a better attitude, have a better policy towards Venezuela and Cuba. At the same time, we cannot have any illusions because, what is the Democratic Party? When one thinks about it, the Democrat. Some people have asked me previously, well, what do you think about this historic election that took place a few weeks ago? Well, I said I agree with you. It's a historical election, but not in the way that you're implying. It's a historical election because for the first time you have two Republican parties fighting it out for power in Washington, D.C. We have to recall that it was the Biden, Kamala Harris, Obama trio that flushed Bernie Sanders a few months ago, and in its place, opened up the doors wide open to Republican anti-Trump Republicans, welcoming them in droves to the Democratic Party, to the extent we've seen how Biden has stacked his nominees for different posts in his cabinet. They're all hardline, hawkish people, many of them aligned with the Republican Party aggressive policy towards the countries of the world. So it's really the Democratic Party is really a light Republican Party. And that's why the whole political scenario has been moved to the right, not so much because of Trump, but because of the appeasement policy of the Obama Biden forces. That is uh, taking a stand against the left wing, so-called left wing of the Democratic Party, while being so understanding and open-minded with regards to the right wingers who have been allowed into the Democratic Party to pretty much take care of it, take hold of it. So I think that the situation is in the hands of the people in the streets, people who are looking for an alternative to the two-party system, which is really a one-party system that promotes imperialism and domestically racism and the plunder of the vast majority of the people. This is the only alternative that I see. Perhaps it's a good thing that the Democratic Party has been transformed into a light version of the Republican Party. So it's clear for people now to see that the problem in the United States of America is a two-party system. And we in Canada are very much affected negatively by the illusions that are spread in the United States, and on the basis of the United States, its tentacles reach all over the world to give the illusion that the United States is a democracy. You have a two-party system. Sure, they have squabbles amongst them, but they switch easily from one party to the other. This is very far from the truth. Both parties are the enemies of the people domestically and of the peoples of the world.
Arnold, I have a tweet here from Ilhan Omar saying that she's drawing up articles of impeachment and that Donald Trump should be impeached by the House of Representatives and removed from office by the United States Senate, and that we cannot allow him to remain in office. It is a matter of preserving our republic and we need to fulfill an oath. That's a tweet there from Ilhan Omar regarding Donald Trump and the events that we've seen today. There is a certain split within the Republican Party, as we saw that some continue to voice the arguments of Trump, others have decided not to, and to respect what we can call a peaceful transition to power for Joe Biden. Within this split within the Republican Party, this move to the right by the Democrat Party, as you said, the streets could decide this. Do you think we could see over the course of this next year, over the course of Biden's term in office, continued tensions in the United States and street clashes between different forces?
I think that hopefully, and I think we're bound to see, perhaps not immediately, but in the coming months or 1 or 2 years, an increase of activities in the street against racism in the United States, against poverty. United States going through the terrible pandemic, which is killing thousands and thousands of people for the very simple and obvious reason that the United States does not have a health system which is capable of taking care of the people in its own country. So but I think, quite frankly, what is going to decide whether the struggle is rekindled or not is if people break away from the illusions of the Democratic Party. What happened, like just about 1 or 2 days ago, on January 5th, if I recall, Jacob Blake, who was murdered in Kenosha, Wisconsin, a few months ago, 7 shots in the back, right? Well, yesterday, the police who carried that out were admonished. They were not found guilty. They're free. That was just yesterday. Like I noticed, I couldn't help but thinking when Wolf Blitzer and the other stars of CNN, these liberals, they say, "Oh, the whole world is watching us now in Washington D.C." Yeah, that's the problem. A lot of people are watching this conflict between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. But how come the people are not watching what happened on January 5th when the police who attacked Jacob Blake were left free to go? And I think one of the reasons is that what has happened while the mass movement, I would call a rebellion after the murder of George Floyd, that I would say was a rebellion against the entire system, the political system, the economic system, against imperialism. That was doing very well until when? When the elections were called and the Biden-Obama Kamala Harris ticket was announced, did you notice how the activities in the streets went down, diminished substantially? That is dangerous. I remember I wrote an article a short while ago, in which, in collaboration with some of my colleagues in the United States, in which we predicted that this was written while the demonstrations were taking place across the United States, and this rebellion last year across the United States. We said that what will stop that rebellion is not Trump, nor the National Guard, nor the army. It would rather be as a result of the Democratic Party co-opting, co-opting the Black Lives Matter movement, co-opting the rebellion against the entire system that was taking place last year. And unfortunately, this is what happened. You know, this news that just came out yesterday about the Jacob Blake police who the police who assaulted Blake have gone scot free, and there's nothing in this taking place in the street against that. It's not the fault of the people. It's the fault of the co-optation of the Democratic Party. And that's why I've always said, I'm not alone in saying it, that the Democratic Party is the gravedigger of the mass movements in the United States of America. That is the danger, not that Trump. We know everyone knows what Trump is all about, but we people are not very clear on the Democratic Party, Obama, Biden, Kamala Harris, and all that, if I may say so, disgusting identity politics, which has one goal, and that is to co-opt the revolutionary movement into an avenue that is harmless for the status quo. So I guess we'll see. Everything depends on the political consciousness of the American people, the activism of the heroic people on the ground throughout the United States. I'm talking about the real revolutionaries, the real left who oppose the two-party system domestically and internationally. How far will they get in trying to reverse the tide of co-optation that was taken up by the Democratic Party?